Good morning and welcome from me, Laura Goodfellow, to our 6th Inclusive Innovation webinar supporting positive societal and environmental change. I'm Head of Business Engagement at Interface, and we're delighted to be hosting this webinar in partnership with CEIS. So let me introduce the panel who I have with me here today. Mairi McCallum, the Project Manager at Moray FoodPlus, and Dr. Malcolm Clark of Moray College, UHI. So the purpose of this webinar series, of which this is the 6th, is to support and facilitate innovation across Scotland's third sector. We want to raise awareness around the resources that are available to help you address societal and/or environmental issues with your innovative ideas. For those that aren't aware of Interface, we provide a free service to individuals, organisations and businesses of all sizes in all sectors, matching them to Scotland's universities, colleges and research institutes for a variety of different projects. We have access to world-leading academic experts who are very interested in applied research, so looking into an idea or a challenge that somebody has and researching a solution and making sure it's practical to implement. We can also provide advice and support on a range of funding options to help offset the costs of these projects, including the Innovation Voucher Funding Programme designed to support a business working with academia. Administered by Interface but approved by the Scottish Funding Council, these schemes are good for initial projects, and the long-standing Innovation Voucher Scheme has more recently been supplemented by the Workforce Innovation Voucher. And this is in place for a really innovative review of how a business works and maximises its workforce effectiveness and productivity. So our concept isn't new. We've been on the go for over 16 years now. And in that time, we've reached almost 3,500 businesses and got over 2,650 projects with an academic partner off the ground. And this map shows the locations of businesses that we have supported, and it shows the wide geographical reach across Scotland. Our team is based in different locations the length and breadth of Scotland, which gives us the opportunity to get to know areas and businesses better. The collaborative projects that we've facilitated have supported new product development, access to new markets, new processes, increased revenue and profits, and just new ways of doing things, and which is maybe particularly important to consider just now as we move to the fireside section of our webinar. So I've already introduced you to Mairi and Malcolm, and Mairi, I'm going to kick off with you if that's okay. Can you tell me, just by way of introduction, a little bit about your organisation and what it is that you do?
Right, so we're Moray FoodPlus, and we are a food charity in the north of Scotland. We've been running since 2012. Initially we were known as Community Food Moray, and the focus then was really on nutrition and accessibility to food, but kind of over the years our focus has changed slightly. So we look more at food insecurity and how we can support people that are in crisis. So the main core services are food bank. We're a wee bit different from other food banks in that we do cover quite a large area. We cover the whole county, and unlike other food banks where most people just sort of drop in, we actually deliver food sort of to different areas. We began sort of developing projects to support people before they reach crisis point. So we have we've got over 20 community larders, so that's working in partnership with different organisations to put food in their services. We do food recovery, so we take surplus food from supermarkets and we give that out to organisations, and they use that either for activities or to support their clients, do things like gardening and cooking. And we do family resilience work as well now, so we do sort of one-to-one parenting groups, supper clubs. We have an autism group, we do community meals, we have a lunch club, so we do quite a lot of different activities. And our new project is a mobile pantry, so we're really looking at making food, again we're going back to food accessibility, so we're kind of gone full circle. So it's about taking food into the really rural areas, because we were quite aware during COVID that access to food was quite an issue for people that were living in the very rural communities in Moray. So although the food bank is our core function, we do a lot of other sort of projects around that just to support people.
Absolutely, and it's just like everything that you're saying here is innovative, like thinking of different ways to kind of like reach people that need to access the service and what you're doing. What was it that made you think about contacting academia, or how did that come about?
We initially were members of the Trussell Trust, and through the Trussell Trust we had access to their database, and we made the decision a couple of years ago to leave and become independent. So we're an independent food bank, but we're part of the Independent Food Aid Network. And as soon as we left the Trussell Trust, we kind of lost the ability to record all our stats, which is really important to us. We record our stats just so we can keep track of demand in our service, but we also report nationally as well, because we think it's really important that Murray's reflected in the national picture too. So we had been using a spreadsheet, which is okay, but it's not ideal. So when we were put in touch with Malcolm at UHI, it gave us the opportunity to develop something that was bespoke, because there wasn't anything available to us.
Okay, so then that's a nice leap onto you, Malcolm, then. Can you kind of outline to us how UHI are supporting the development database to kind of help identify the rural poverty trends?
We put in, Mary and I both put in a bid to, to through interface to the panel for funding. We discussed what they needed, their requirements, and kind of really drilled down on how, Mary introduced me to something called the SIMD, which is a kind of the index for kind of that represents the kind of deprivation and kind of associated data that goes with it, why, hotspots for poverty, that kind of stuff, and other data. But so we kind of, we've discussed that and discussed how we could kind of look at some kind of data analytics around, some kind of artificial intelligence around capturing the data securely, and being able to, basically allow Mary and her colleagues to be able to access the kind of data of people in rural areas, as well as in, areas that are associated with the SIMD, the kind of areas that have now not had any investment in, and basically worked out what they needed. They needed the ability to be able to do reporting, and also, from an academic side, wanted to actually visualize, using map-based data like SIMD, to be able to produce proof of concept that would allow Mary to continue doing the fantastic work that they're doing over there.
Absolutely, and that's sort of, it's almost the same concept as we've tried to use the kind of the map to show the kind of the reach of interface. Yours is very much being modelled on the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation, so it's a tool that we use as well, just to identify, make sure that we're kind of reaching the people that we need to reach. You mentioned like the innovation voucher that you applied for funding. I mentioned it at the outset, so that's what the funding is for. It's something that's very, very innovative, and it will help to take it to the next level and actually give the academics the time, it will offset the cost of their time to take this project forward. And that's, it's an attractive way for a company or organisation to have that first relationship, because it is matched in kind by the organisation. So, organisations, particularly those with charity status, it's very challenging to identify £5,000, which might not be a lot of money to some organisations, but actually that amount of money is a lot for some organisations. So Malcolm, tell me, like, companies might think it's like challenging to collaborate with large academic institutions. So how do you ensure that you're supporting the SMEs and the third sector organisations?
We have, I have to massive credit to Mary, to be honest, because she's kind of put me on a journey now, and really allowed, where before I was kind of lecturing. Sorry, I don't want to turn it into a history webinar, but Mary, has kind of started some, tiny little snowball, and it's now kind of really built a kind of head of steam with collaboration between third sector parties and you know, small medium enterprises too. And you know, it's so that I think the most challenging aspect, I think, is around capturing the requirements for what they want. We've got, you know, we have a huge, you know, set of you know, we have a wide ranging amount of people with skill sets that can really kind of match anything that anybody, you know, needs, like filmmaking, data analytics, artificial intelligence, you know, just, you know, kind of rudimentary databases, anything you like.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a challenge as such. It's just a case of, I think really it's just, you know, just get in touch and then we can work out whether it's feasible or not.
Yeah, and I think that's where interface and the kind of the knowledge exchange offices within the individual universities are really geared up to support that. So what they're, you know, certainly when we're going out and speaking to organisations, we're saying, you know, what is the business challenge, and almost like not being so focused on what the solution might be. It's like, what's the challenge, and we'll break that down and almost make it sort of into bite-sized pieces and send it across to each of the institutions in Scotland that might have the relevant expertise, so that then it can be filtered across the institution so that we find the right person. And then again, at the stage of the innovation voucher, we've got, you know, a team within Interface as well that will help to refine that application just to make sure it is as robust as possible. All of this being supported by the knowledge exchange offices within the different universities, and including, you know, UHI, who are very, very committed to this. So, Mairi, with that in mind then, sort of what do you think is the hardest part for an organisation when it comes to collaborating with the university?
Well, I think for us, to turn it around, the easiest part was we were quite clear in what we wanted, and we were able to tell Malcolm what we needed, and I guess we were just sort of leaving the technical stuff to Malcolm. So that's always a challenge when somebody's sort of talking technical things that you don't always understand, but Malcolm's very good at sort of explaining things and being quite clear. I think that the biggest challenge is just time, because obviously Malcolm lectures as well and he's very, very busy, and it's just trying to get our schedules, because obviously as a food bank we do have very busy times of the year, other times we're a bit quieter, and it's just trying to fit around that. And obviously we've got our commitment to the project as well, so the testing aspect and just making ourselves available for things. So it's just maybe try to tie your diaries up, and accepting that we both have time challenges.
I like what you did there, because I came in with a question of what's the hardest thing, but actually no, because we're just expecting, you know, people's perceptions to be that it's challenging and, you know, there's these barriers perceived or otherwise. So actually by saying, you know, it was easy, maybe that's a more positive fit for us.
Yeah.
In this case, Laura, it wasn't difficult, because Mairi and the team, you know, in some projects have been in the goalposts keep moving. With Mairi, it was like we need this, and this, and it was like, okay, how can we do it? And that was it. It was great.
Yeah, no, and I think with our line of questioning as well, we're kind of expecting people to, you know, we're raising awareness about the possibilities of working with the university, because often organisations haven't even thought about it. So we're kind of thinking, right, if they do think about it, are they thinking, oh, it's not for me? So I suppose that's where we're coming from, is just to try and kind of say that it is, you know, there is an opportunity for so many organisations to access the support within the universities. So sticking with the positives then, Mairi, what benefits have been realised to date, would you say?
I mean, at the moment, we've got the database, but because it's sort of part of the way through the year, we're too busy to sort of put our backlog of data, so we're just kind of playing with it and we can see the potential in it. So I think for us, it's more, we have this tool and we can see what it's going to offer us. So the most important thing for us is just really making sure that our services meet the need that's there. So by being able to gather the statistics, we can see certain areas in Moray that we maybe need to focus on a wee bit more. So during the summer we ran an arts project in Forres, and the reason we picked Forres is because that's got the highest rate of child poverty in Moray, and it was a project with teenagers during the summer holidays. So by gathering the stats, it lets us just sort of see where our focus can maybe shift, and also so that we know that we are meeting all the needs of our community. So I'd mentioned we've started a mobile pantry service, so it's not quite on the road yet, but further down the line, when we're gathering the stats around the food bank usage, we can see that actually our mobile service is going to the areas that needs it most as well. So it will definitely inform how we deliver new services, and also just to make sure we're targeting the areas that we want to target in our work.
Oh, it's fascinating. And I mean, obviously, we can't not talk about the impact that COVID's had over the last sort of 20 months or so. And as well, you know, the challenges continue, you know, the recent increases in fuel as well. I mean, what impact? I mean, it almost seems like such a daft question because it's going to be colossal, but what impact has there been on your organisation?
So when COVID sort of hit last year, we were incredibly busy, and then there was a lot of community support and a lot of extra financial support. So for a while, we actually went a wee bit quieter with some of our services, and then we've sort of picked up again. One of the big impacts just now has been the universal credit uplift, how that's ended. So people all of a sudden are finding themselves very short of money, and that's been combined with the increased cost of food, the increased cost of fuel, both for the car and for the house. So what we're finding is an organisation, the fuel costs, that's obviously costing us a lot more to have our vans on the road. We cover such a large geographic area. We've actually got 3 vans that run every day. And some days we can be as far south as Tomtow or over in Cullen and Forest, and we can be in all parts of the county in the one day. So that's quite a big challenge. But what we're finding for a lot of our service users, we do a thing called co-parcels. So a lot of people can't afford to have their electricity running, that they may be careful how they use their oven, or they don't have electricity at all. So we give them a co-parcel which doesn't need cooking. And we've noticed really in the last month quite a sharp increase in the number of people that are struggling with their fuel costs, and they're really not cooking anymore. Which, when you're living in the north of Scotland and it's starting to get cold and we've had the first lot of snow in the hills, that's a concern. And we're also aware of people that have to make a decision about, they have to get to work, so they have to put the fuel in their car, and that's costing them a lot more. So they might have to use a food bank so they can have food to feed themselves as well. It's a lot of hard decisions that people are having to make just because the cost of living's gone up and their incomes come down as well.
Absolutely, and it's absolutely fascinating listening to you, and you're so kind of aware and in tune with the kind of the different variables, and you like literally 1, 2, 3 steps ahead of what's going to happen. How many people are within your organisation? Because no matter what, no matter how organised, how much data you've got, there's the physical constraints as well. You can only be in one place. How do you kind of work around that?
We have 10 members of staff, but there's only really 3 that work in the food bank. That includes me, but I'm not always there. But we have a fantastic volunteer team. So we actually have about 85 volunteers that work across our service over the course of a week. So on a daily basis, working just in the food bank alone, we might have sort of between 5 and 7 volunteers helping out. So volunteers sort out all the donations. They make up all the referrals. We have volunteer drivers that go out and deliver as well. So, you know, we've got fantastic support through our volunteers and also just the local community as well.
Okay, so you've mentioned some of the kind of positives and the fact that it was easy, but if you had like some top tips in terms of how to get the most from the kind of collaboration, I'm going to come to you and ask you the same question, Malcolm, but what would be your top tips for making sure that everything has run as it has and according to plan?
I think have a very clear idea of what you want. I think that was a great benefit to us, that we knew what we wanted and we were able to express that to Malcolm, so there was no misunderstanding about what we wanted to achieve. We were both kind of on the same page. Having agreed timescale as well, so we knew when we were expected to do stuff, so we knew when like maybe the first version of the database was ready for us to test, and we knew that there would be an involvement there for us. So we had to try and factor in that time, or just be realistic with Malcolm and say actually it's going to take us a wee bit longer. So again, just having agreed sort of time frame, that definitely helps.
And in terms of the project with UHI, was it always the intention that this would be like a sort of one-off standalone project, or is there, you know, a hope to kind of continue it into different projects, maybe industry-led, you know, student projects or consultancy? Is there a hope there?
I think obviously there's not a bespoke database for food banks, and there are a lot of independent food banks all recording their stats in different ways. So for us to be able to use this and show that it works well and the benefit it brings to an organisation, and perhaps for other independent food banks to pick it up as well. And then IFAN, Independent Food Aid Network, Sabine there sort of records all the stats. So obviously everybody's recording in different ways. It makes her job a lot harder. So if there was some way that the network could maybe come together more, it's obviously an option that Malcolm could explore, whether that this sort of national system could be in place, which just makes it easier for everybody reporting their stats, because it's just really important when we are highlighting the issue of food insecurity to Scottish Government and Westminster Government, that if everybody is reporting in the same way and it kind of complements what the Trussell Trust report, you get a much clearer picture of what's happening in the UK. So there's a lot of potential for the system.
Amazing. And Malcolm, the same kind of questions for you. Like, what would your top tips, and I suppose what sort of support is in place and what mechanisms are in place to make sure that things do run according to plan?
Well, I would say, Interface have been fabulous over the last couple of years that I've started doing these projects, and they've been flexible due to COVID, because there are recruitment things. But for me, I echo what Mairi just said there in terms of clearly knowing what you want, but also to add that to be a slight open-minded to different alternative solutions, and just have an open kind of open-minded collaborative mindset, for to think, okay, you've got your ideas, but and then we offer several solutions, and then they choose from there.
And then, so do you sort of think the same as well when this project comes to you? Is like, how do you, do you think the long game almost, like, we can do this project and this is a £5,000 project that will give us, X, Y, and Z and the feasibility. Do you think at the outset how you can maybe take this forward and be more of a sustained relationship and pull in different resource?
From an academic point of view, we've already got the attention of the Rural Poverty Unit down in Glasgow that does report to the Scottish Government for capturing rural poverty. So if we can expand this project, it would be, that's what we're looking at. But academically, I'm also kind of looking for kind of referable publications too, using the anonymous data that we can use, the visualization data, so that we can report along line the SIMD saying, look, you've got this area here, but you've got in this postal district, you've got areas that haven't been captured. So I have lots of things that that I can that I can utilize.
Yeah, we're going to come back to the kind of data capture in a minute, because there's a few questions kind of been through on that subject, but I'm kind of keen, just before we kind of move into that section, is to kind of see, and Mairi, you've maybe touched on this a little bit as well, but what's next for Moray FoodPlus?
I think for us, obviously, COVID meant a lot of our services were on hold, so we're just sort of starting to build them back up again. And like I said, we try and do more early intervention work, so it's just to build on that. We are developing our mobile pantry, and we're hoping that we'll get that on the road sort of December, January time. So that's a priority, really, just to push ahead with that. And we've been doing a lot of our outreach work. Ultimately, we're really supportive of the Scottish Government consultation about ending the need for food banks, and it's just what we can do to support the work around that, and how we can maybe change our practice to fit in with that. Looking at the sort of partnership work based around the cash first approach, which somebody's mentioned in their questions. So we're very involved at the strategic level and how that maybe affects how we deliver our service. But ultimately, at the moment, just to get through Christmas, because Christmas is a really, really busy time of year for us, both from a donation point of view, but we're so well supported locally, and it's the logistics of dealing with the amount of food that comes in the door, but also the amount of food that has to go back out the door as well. Last December, we supported almost 1,000 people just in 1 month. So we think we're going to be busier this year. So it's just the kind of practicalities around that. So we kind of have short-term and longer-term goals as well, but at the moment it's kind of about sort of Christmas, looking at getting our projects back up and running, and then the sort of longer term work of if hopefully we reach the point where food banks aren't needed, and what that means to us as an organisation. Obviously we have a lot of other services that we deliver, so it's about what other opportunities there could be for us.
Absolutely, and it's that, and I'm sitting and I'm going through my mind as well. It's like it's fascinating what you're doing. It's so impressive and it's so incredible. It's just so unfortunate that it's a need. That it's one of those. It's like it's a well done. What next? But as you say, there's lots of other things, and actually your involvement in the community is incredible.
A lot of our other work's sort of based around social isolation and bringing people together around food, supporting families. So I mean that work's always going to be needed, and food's just a great tool to bring people together. Even Malcolm and I would have our chats over coffee and cake and things like that. So as an organisation, we do things that way, and we try and look to see what the need is, and we always develop services based around needs and by speaking to people and what they feel that would help them. So I mean that work's always going to continue.
No, absolutely, and the data that you're gathering will hopefully help to inform and eradicate need as well. Do you know what I mean? Which yeah. I'm going to jump to the first question and then pass over to Fiona, because Caroline has asked, how are you actually collecting the data, which I think is a great way to start the questions.
Because we cover such a large area, we tend to work to referrals, so we get referrals coming in from different agencies. We also do self-referrals, so we kind of take the minimum amount of information from people. So we take their name, their year of birth and their postcode. Obviously if we have to do a home delivery, we take their address, but that's really the information we record, the number of people in their household, the age brackets that comes into, and that's the information that we record. So that allows us to kind of see if there's a greater need in certain areas, or if there's an area that we didn't think there was a need, all of a sudden there's a spike, so we can start to sort of investigate that and look around it. So I know with Malcolm, we did sort of speak about the need for anonymity, I can never say it, to be anonymous.
We know what you mean.
Anonymous. And we're very aware in rural areas that postcodes can be quite identifying. So we don't sort of come down to street level when we look at stuff. We'd look at villages and areas rather than coming down to that sort of finite level. That's really the information that we do collect. So when we report to IFAN, they're always really interested in the number of children that we support. Obviously with Scotland in particular, they've got the drive towards the child poverty target, so that information is really important to us. We do a gender breakdown. We tend to record why people are coming, so most of the time it's just low income. It's a bit of a myth that most people that use food banks are actually on benefits. There's a high proportion of people that are in work. Murray's quite a low wage economy. A lot of people work part-time, so there's a lot of people that are working that are still needing that support, so we can kind of record that information as well. And that's all just stuff that's really useful for us to know and to report back to other agencies.
Thank you for that. Fiona, have we got any other questions?
Yeah, we do. We've got one from Eddie, which he says, is the data you're collecting through this allowing the move towards the cash first approach model? I actually don't know what that is, so it'd be quite good to know what the cash first approach model is, because he's saying that we see the sector moving towards better, or do you find that there's restrictions in this approach with a rural area?
So basically we try and provide sort of provision in the most dignified method, which generally food banks don't tend to be. So as an organisation, we were looking at other things like the community larders and the pantries, but ultimately the best thing for people is to have money. So we're sort of looking to move towards cash first, and it can either be through income maximisation, so making sure that people are getting all the benefits they're entitled to. Locally in Moray, there was a wee bit of extra financial support during COVID, and just making sure that people are kind of accessing that. So the food bank's really a last resort rather than the first port of call. The Scottish Government consultation paper around ending the need for food banks very much focused on cash first. So you can have things like supermarket vouchers where you can give to people instead of a food bank parcel, or they could get payment into their bank account. And ultimately, you're looking at things like universal basic income. So everybody just has more money. We just have a higher level of income. So for us as an organisation, we support the cash first approach, but it's difficult for us to implement. We are not the sort of leaders in Moray around that. So in Moray, we have the Citizens Advice Bureau, which through the consultation, the Scottish Government are suggesting they would maybe be the lead agencies to give out supermarket vouchers to people. And we've also got the money advice team. So that's really the main place that people would go to access the benefit advice and the extra funding that's available to people. So I think as we move towards a cash first approach, we have to come together as partners to work out how that's really going to fit and how things work in Moray. So it's still kind of early days, but the data that we record, we can sort of compare that to what the Moray Council record for their services and just see if we're identifying the same areas in need. At the moment, one of the issues is that most of the services are accessible by phone, and even sort of pre-COVID, a lot of people were having to travel into Elgin. So if we can actually go to the council and say, we know there's really high need in these areas, that it would be beneficial to do more outreach service rather than expecting people to come in. So it's still, it's in development really, but we are hoping that there will be this move towards cash first approach, and we would love it if food banks weren't actually needed at all. So I don't know if that answers Edith's question.
That's great. We've got another question from Caroline. So she said, so if I understood, the data is collected from people who are service users. Are there plans to do surveys with those who have not approached you, possibly due to stigma?
Yeah. What we sort of link in with other organisations. So in Moray, there's a lot of local outcome plans being developed, local outcome improvement plans called LOIPs, and they ask those sorts of questions of people. So we're able to link in with that sort of work, and sometimes we support a lot of the consultation by doing community meals for them, and so we work in partnership that way. I don't know if it's something as an organisation we would be able to do, but through the other services that we deliver, which are more accessible to people and there's not the same stigma around, we do sort of get stories from people, and we start to find out the barriers that people face. And Caroline's actually our funding officer for our mobile pantry project. So once the pantry's on the road and we have that opportunity to speak to more people, if we feel that there's a need for a service or there's an issue that we can maybe support folk to address, then we would do it. But I don't know, anytime we've sort of done public surveys, they don't always work. We find that going in and speaking to organisations and people using other services, it helps more. We obviously have focus groups based around a lot of the other work we use. So if through the food recovery, we maybe support an organisation and their activities, and we'll go in and speak to them, so we can get feedback that way. So I know Caroline's saying that makes total sense. I'm glad it does to somebody.
Well, thank you so much for that. And just sort of before we wrap up, I always kind of like to check with both for yourself, Mairi, and you, Malcolm, is there anything that we've not covered off? Is there anything else that you think we should share about this kind of collaborative journey?
I'd just say if anybody has an idea to sort of speak to you, it's definitely been beneficial to us. Third sector organisations, we obviously don't have the same income that we can just go and buy really expensive databases or get them custom built. So it's been kind of an asset to us to be able to do that. Again, third sector, we're quite networked together, but not always out with it. So definitely sort of look out with your sector and speak to the universities.
No, thank you for that. And Malcolm, is there anything that you want to add?
Just that if you've got an issue, that you think that can be, like this project that we can help with, we are, specializing in socially responsible projects such as this, not just businesses. So if you have a need, please just reach out, and I can't promise that we can help you, but we'll certainly do our best to.
No, thank you for that. And Fiona's been sharing contact details as well there. Very much the case. Get in touch if you've got an idea. If UHI can't help, there is a very, very good chance that the other institutions across Scotland will be able to help. We've got a 95% success rate in terms of identifying at least one or more academic institution for every project that we translate and issue to the universities. And even in the case where we wouldn't be able to identify expertise, we would try and find some kind of solution and link you into the appropriate organisation. So if there is something bumbling away in the back of your mind that you think, I wonder, just get in touch and we will absolutely have a chat through with you and see how we could possibly help.